of Gulpin. Now, Gulpin might not look like it, but he is a poison type Pokemon. Poison type Pokemon. And it's number 316 in the Pokedex. As you can see, it is primarily a green Pokemon. Its body is really round, really soft as well, as you can see, and it has a very big mouth, two very small eyes, these are its eyes, two little hands, one and two, and a yellow feather. This is a feather. As you can also see, it has a very sort of like calm expression, almost like, it's always at ease, always like chilling, There he is. Now let's talk about Gulpin's body, because it is truly fascinating. Now, as I said before, Gulpin is known as the Stomach Pokémon, and that is because Gulpin's entire body, his entire body, functions as one large stomach. So all of this, obviously apart from its like face, all of this is a stomach. It's like, a belly, a stomach. Its skin, as you can see, is quite flexible and elastic. This is not harm it, don't worry. And it allows it to stretch and expand its body and its mouth as it eats. And because of this, Gulpin can even swallow objects that are larger than Gulpin, so larger than itself, without harming itself, basically. Now Gulpin, rather than, chewing or breaking the food and eating it in little bits like knife and fork, kind of how we do it, Gulpin simply swallows something. He swallows it right up, and then it digests things slowly and safely. Its stomach acids, the acid in its belly is very, 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 very powerful. But it works quite slowly, so it will swallow something up, and then the acids in its belly will break things down slowly over time until nothing remains, and until it's eaten, basically. Now, that's most of its body, as I said, and because, the stomach takes up such a big part of its body, that means that its little heart and brain are very, very small. But that's all in order to have a bigger stomach. I think it's pretty interesting. Would you rather have a bigger brain and a bigger heart, or a bigger stomach? Let me know. Now, the other interesting thing about its body is the yellow feather that it has on its head. And the only really interesting thing is that male Gulpins have a longer feather than female Gulpins do, which is, I guess, a good way to identify a Gulpin's gender. You can just say long feather or short feather, nice and easy. So, as I said, I'll say it again, Gulpin is mostly stomach, right? That means you can assume it has to eat a lot, jump, jump, jump. It has to eat a lot. And the thing is, right, when Gulpin is digesting, when it's eating, after it's eaten, while it's digesting, it does tend to expel some pretty bad smelling gases, which is why, I've left beside your desks a little face mask, just in case it gets a little bit too bad smelling for you guys. But hopefully it will not reach you guys, it shouldn't be too bad. Fortunately, or unfortunately for me, I'm already quite used to it at this point, so that's how I can deal with it for now. But yeah, getting used to it is no easy feat, let me tell you that. Oh, and as a sort of fun fact, you can actually know when Gulpin is digesting its food. It's actually quite simple. If its mouth is closed like this one right here, its mouth is closed, then it means that it's digesting its food. The food is inside of its belly and it's, digesting the food. If its mouth is open, that means that its stomach is empty, so it wants to eat. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Pretty like a child almost, like, I'm hungry, my mouth is open, give me food. My mouth is closed, I am not hungry, I'm digesting, nice and easy. So yeah, it's a Pokemon that is always dealing with food and with eating. Lastly, I have to say that although I wouldn't call Gulpin a strong battler Pokemon, and I would also say that it's not a Pokemon that likes to cause trouble, it's always chilling, just eating, digesting, and eating again, and digesting again, and eating, and it's actually a surprisingly resilient Pokemon, because its body is so stretchy and so soft that it is actually quite hard for it to get damaged. If I, obviously I'm not going to punch him, but if I push, he's very soft, it's just going to kind of like not do anything, So that's a pretty cool characteristic to have. Okay, so before moving on, are there any questions related to Gulpin? Anything related to anything we've covered? Where does Gulpin live? Good question. So, usually wild Gulpins can be found in grasslands or savannas, pretty self-explanatory, pretty simple. Grasslands or savannas, I wouldn't say there's like a special habitat, how ice-type Pokemon tend to live in ice mountains. Gulpins are just kind of chilling in grasslands or savannas, mostly. Any other questions? Any other fun facts? Let me think. Oh, actually, you know what? Gulpin, a bit of a random fun fact, but yeah, Gulpin is the only Pokemon which has a base stat total of 302, which means that no other Pokemon to this date has a recorded base stat total of exactly 302, which is quite surprising, to be honest, because there's a lot of Pokemon. And with that being said, its evolution, which we will get to in a minute, has a base stat total of 467, and it is also the only Pokemon with that stat total. I don't know, that's a fun fact. I hope that's good enough. Speaking of its evolution, let's move on to it, okay? So, when Gulpin gets enough battle experience, all that good stuff, it will evolve into Swallot, 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 who is still just a poison type Pokemon. Nice and easy. As you can see, Swallot is a lot larger than little Gulpin over here, and is mostly purple instead of the green that Gulpin is over here. Now, it has, instead of these like little eyes, it has still small but sort of red eyes and yellow sort of whiskers that kind of function as the little feather that Gulpin has, because as a fun fact, the whiskers that male swallows have are larger or longer than the ones female swallows have. Remember how we said that same thing about the feather? Well, there you go. And an important fun fact, very important of course, very important, is that Swallot now gains an extra finger. Wow, that's amazing. You see, Gulpin has 1, 2, Swallot has a third one. Amazing. Let's go, Gulpin. Now Swallot, just like Gulpin, is constantly eating, and its stomach is also constantly, dissecting, and it can honestly dissect basically anything. Swallots can even eat polluted or poisonous things, and in fact, because of this fact, a lot of efforts have been done to use Swallots to reduce pollution. The idea is that, a Swallot would, go to a polluted area and num 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 munch away at, polluted or harmful materials, and it would digest them in its own belly, sort of cleaning the area, which I think is a fantastic idea to naturally get rid of pollution, and they get free food as well, and it helps everyone. This of course does not harm the swalot. It's, as I said, its acid can dissolve basically anything, and it gets to eat a lot, so I think it's a very nice initiative. I think now it's time that we move on to its moves and its abilities. Oh, but before, just letting you know that I said Gulpin is the Stomach Pokemon, right? Swallot is actually not called the Stomach Pokemon anymore. It is now known as the Poison Bag Pokemon, which is a very fitting name for a Pokemon that is basically a walking bag of poison. Pretty self-explanatory, because the stomach acids that it has are very powerful and can melt through anything basically. Now we have to briefly talk about its attacks and all that stuff. As I said, Gulpin over here and also Swallot are not really fast or like aggressive sort of Pokemon, but we have to talk about some of its attacks anyways, because it does, however, have some solid endurance. As I mentioned, it can resist, and surprisingly, it can pack a bit of a punch as well, especially if they are provoked. They're not aggressive in nature, but if you mess with them, they're not gonna just take it. Now, looking at some moves, right? It learns Body Slam upon evolving, and it can also learn a lot of poisonous moves, as you would expect, such as Sludge Bomb, Acid Spray, and Gunk Shot. And it also tends to learn a lot of moves which Pokemon that eat a lot tend to have. There's a bunch of Pokemon that like to eat, and they learn these moves. These are Stockpile, Spit Up, and Swallow. And also, very fittingly, it can learn the move Belch. Now, what Belch does is that if Swallow or Gulpin or anyone has eaten a berry, it will send out a very strong, damaging belch at the opponent. It's a bit disgusting, but it's just the move Belch. And funnily enough, another move, Swallot, was discovered to recently be able to learn is actually Explosion. Yes, I know, Explosion, right? Kind of funny for like a non-aggressive Pokemon, but maybe you're messing with it too much, and it's like, you know what, I'm done. Explosion, get out of here, But yeah, I thought that was really interesting as well. Now let's quickly look at some TMs it can learn as well, okay? As always, don't worry, we're gonna do just one TM per type. Ready? Log in. Here we go. So, it can learn Knock Off for dark type moves, Thunder Punch for electric, Fire Punch for fire, Ice Punch for ice, I know, Shadow Ball for ghost, Mud Shot for ground, Zen Headbutt for psychic, Water Pulse for water, Poison Jab for, believe it or not, poison, and Hyper Beam for normal. Now that's a bunch of strong moves, as you can see, and there's a surprising amount of, punching moves. Like, I said Fire Punch, Ice Punch, Thunder Punch, Poison Jab is basically a punching move as well. And it's really interesting considering how small its little hands are, But yeah. I think lastly, let's look at abilities quickly. Now, Swallot has 3 abilities that it can have, and obviously Gulpin has the same 3 as well. And those are Liquid Ooze, Sticky Hold, and Gluttony. Let's go through what they each do, okay? Firstly, Liquid Ooze. So Liquid Ooze makes it so that, health draining moves, such as Absorb or Giga Drain, Leech Life, any of these moves, they will damage the user instead of healing them. So for example, if I have a Pokemon use Absorb on my Gulpin, and my Gulpin has Liquid Ooze, they will use Absorb. Gulpin will take damage from the Absorb, but the attacking Pokemon, instead of healing itself, the Pokemon will take damage instead, since it is essentially absorbing poison, Not great for the attacker, I mean. Next is Sticky Hold. that makes it so that no matter what happens, Swallot or Gulpin, whoever has it, cannot lose its held item, since the item is stuck to them with sticky hold. So for example, a Pokeball is maybe not an item you'd give to a Pokemon, but if I was to give this Pokeball to Gulpin and it had sticky hold, no matter what I use, if I use knockoff, if I try, obviously if he gives it to me, that's fine. But in a battle, he's not losing this ball unless obviously he uses the item. Obviously you can't use a Pokeball as a Pokemon, but you know what I mean. So that's pretty handy, I guess, if you wanna protect your item. And the last ability is actually its hidden ability, and it is called Gluttony. Now, gluttony, glutton means you like to eat a lot, I guess. This makes it so Swallot, if Swallot or Gulpin, whoever has the ability Gluttony, if they have a berry, it will eat this berry a lot sooner than the Pokemon normally would. So, usually Pokemons will eat their berries when they have a quarter of their health remaining, right? But if it has Gluttony as an ability, it will actually eat the berry when they have around half of their health left. So it could be handy, to eat your berry sooner, to activate the effect of that berry sooner, to heal because of that berry sooner, It's very useful because sometimes, the Pokemon don't realize they don't eat the berry and then they're gone, they fainted, and they haven't had the chance to use the berry. With Gluttony, that's a lot less likely to happen because it likes to eat it as soon as possible, And I think that's it for these two little poisonous blobs today. This one's hopefully finishing digestion soon. One quick thing to take away from this class is that, strength does not always have to look strong. Gulpin here appears to be very soft and unassuming, but it can endure a lot more than you can expect. And strength-wise, it is a very good Pokemon, to dissect poison or to eat a lot of things. That's a sort of strength as well, in my opinion. And it is something that not many Pokemon can do. Not many Pokemon can help us with pollution, for example, by munching away at the poison. And the second thing is to keep eating like Gulpin over here, if you want, of course. So, thank you so much for coming to class. As always, remember to drink some water, and I'll see you on the next lesson. Goodbye. Bye, 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 bye.